So the last three, like I said, these are the ones that I think mostly encapsulated a variety of the categories and the things I was looking for, not necessarily in prior or order, but movies I love. And two of them no one mentioned, and this first one, number three, some people are going to say it doesn't count. But I don't care. It counts to me. I don't think there's any more fitting high school environment movie with all the emotions and representations of all the cliques and everything going on with popularity and acceptance and getting the girl and all that stuff more than a Goofy movie.
Oh my gosh.
A Goofy movie is fantastic. And if anyone has ever felt uncool or unpopular, or that you had to find your image or try to impress a girl or try to compensate for your family that you're not proud of or whatever, this movie has everything. And then it's got hilarious moments, great characters, a ridiculous premise, obviously, with the Powerline concert and all that stuff and the trip. But the story of him, me working with his dad, even though most of the story is about him and Goofy, Max, his son, and Goofy trying to go on this road trip and trying to bond and him deal with his dad, the attitudes and his association and his motive and his drive for getting Roxanne, the girl, all of that just threads the entire movie and holds it all together. And then the big climax at the end and his overcoming his acceptance of his father and everything. He figures out who he is. He has to humble himself, be honest, and tell Roxanne he wasn't, doesn't his dad doesn't know Powerline, all that stuff, and he's sincere and genuine, and that impresses her, and he gets the girl, and it's just fantastic. And every clique, every type of a person in high school you can think of is totally representative in an awesome opening number, which is what you look for in a good musical. I think it just captures everything. It counts as a high school movie, even though it's a cartoon.
I don't think it doesn't count as a high school movie because it's a cartoon. I think it doesn't count as a high school movie because it has nothing to do with the high school.
It has everything to do with the high school. Everything.
It's not a high school movie because there's only like 10 minutes that actually has to do with the high school. That all has to do with Goofy and I can't remember his kid, Max's.
Maximilian.
Yeah, it's Max and Goofy's relationship. It really, the high school stuff is secondary to that. The Powerline concert and the girl and all that, that's all secondary to the father-son story. It's not a high school movie. I mean, I will admit, I'm not ashamed to admit that Goofy movie is actually one of my favorite cartoons. I think it's a funny movie. I really enjoy it. Not a high school movie.
Totally a high school movie. Everything that he's doing, his conversations with Pete, is it Pete? No, Pete's the dad, whoever his friend is. Is it Pete?
Yeah, Pete.
Yeah. Talking to him the whole time, and yeah, it's Pete. Yeah, but all the interaction with him and Pete, all the conversation with his dad, everything's building up to his image and his trying to be cool and his trying to reject the everything that his dad's trying to push him, because his dad's afraid he's gonna, throw his life away. He's in a gang. He's gonna get in trouble. All that stuff. It's, even though most of the movie is in the middle, having to do with their road trip, everything's threaded together with the whole his whole image, his whole popularity thing, and the whole concept of him trying to impress her. And I think the other thing is that even if you're not in school, your reactions and interactions with other people, like your family, especially at that age, you're still trying to impress people even though they're not around. And I think all the decisions and all of his outbursts and everything that happen throughout the whole movie are all are very realistic emotions and feelings that come out of a high school kid. It's about a high school kid and his dealing with his dad, who he's not impressed with or proud of, and his overall drive to get the girl and to be accepted and popular in school, not just for her. That's totally about a high school kid, even though it's not entirely in a high school scenario, just like some of these other movies we're talking about.
I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what even to say.
All right. I don't care. It's great. All right. Number 2.
Wait, before
Now
you get into
you,
number two, let me just say, I'm not disagreeing that it is a great movie. It does not belong on a top seven high school movie list. That's all I'm saying.
that's exactly what I thought about Sandlot. It's a fantastic movie, but didn't belong on the top seven sports movie list. But moving on.
Okay.
My number two, this is going to be on everyone's list, is The Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club, it's not just that it has a bunch of different cliques and it's all about, the six kids spending a day on Saturday in detention and them trying to interact with each other, and you have a jock and a nerd and an outcast and a popular kid and the stoner and everything. It's not just because you have the different dynamics of different characters, the diversity of different characters in high school. The thing about that movie that's powerful is how they grow and they progress, and the associations that they have with each other, even just in the few hours that they're there together. It really is expressive and realistic to what high school relationships are really like. How you act around an unpopular kid or a nerdy kid when your friends are around is different, and you have people looking up and looking down on each other, and how they are when they're just the six of them in detention, how they can have a whole day together and they can and build this trust and appreciation for each other, can be totally different Monday morning when they go in and hang out with their friends. That's a big conversation piece in multiple scenes in the movie. You also have their, trying to figure out, why they are the way they are. They're very extreme or examples of different stereotypes, and the letter, the paper that Brian writes at the end of it, kind of or describes that.
And you see us as you want to see us. In the simplest terms, the most convenient definitions. You see us as a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Correct?
When they walk out of the school at the end of the movie, they're completely different people, all of them, and they've all grown and progressed in a special way. And it's not something that you watch and you're like, oh, they're gonna just go in and they're all best friends for life. That's not at all how you come out of this movie. But the emotions, how they're dealing with their families, how they're dealing with their school, with their grades, how they're dealing with their peers, how they're dealing with each other, that's all real. And I think that movie captures such a huge variety of aspects of what high school is like, the good and the bad. And it's just presented in such a great drama and also a great comedy. And it's just a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic movie. I don't know how it could be not on anyone's top seven list of high school movies. What do you think of that, Josh?
So, this is a confessional for me. I have never seen The Breakfast Club. So,
I don't know how anyone can get out of the 80s to live until January 1st, 1990 without having seen that movie. I don't get it.
So here's my if I had an excuse, it would be this. By the time I was really starting to focus on movies a lot, it was already the 90s. I mean, I watched movies when I was in the 80s, but I mean, I was only 9 years old when I came out of the 80s. So those movies were probably not on my list of things I wanted to watch. And by the 90s, the movies I was watching were just different than that, I guess. And it just kind of fell off my radar. And then by the time I had heard about it and had thought about it, it's R-rated. And so I kind of adopted my non-R-rated movie rule. And so yes, they are excuses.
I don't think there's any confessional that's come up on our show so far in 3 lists so far that is as disappointing as you having never seen Breakfast Club, other than it being rated R. But that's not even your main reason.
Yeah. So I have made it a point now that if I can find it edited on TV or of some nature, I'm going to watch it, and I will do a review for Saints on Cinema on what I thought of it, because you are not the first person to tell me that it's a fantastic movie. I'm sure you won't be the last. I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of crap for it. In fact, I brought it up to my wife when I heard that we were doing this list, and she specifically asked me, and she makes a point not to watch R-rated movies. How is it possible that you have not seen The Breakfast Club? It's
He's even seen it?
She's even seen it, and I don't know. I'm sure it was an edited version or something that she saw, but I have not seen it. So
now, growing up, when I was mostly familiar with it, it was an edited version recorded off of television, and so I mean, and I still loved and appreciate it even with that. And there's some scenes where they're smoking weed and stuff that was cut out of the TV version, but there's not much vulgarity or anything in there. There's nothing really bad other than just the representation of like kind of more adult things like drugs. So
but that's the thing that's also interesting, and something that I'm sure we'll talk about at another time when we're talking about R-rated movies and why or why not you watch them. But I think that the criteria for watching an R-rated movie or making something R-rated back in the 80s was much different than it is now. And I'm willing to bet that had that movie come out now, it would probably be a PG-13 and not an R. I don't know. I mean,
sure.
I don't know what the purpose is for it being R-rated, but if it's because of drug use, I mean, you see those in PG-13 movies this now all the time. So, but regardless, it is one I'm going to watch.
Good. You can go on VidAngel and see if you can find it on there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My number one high school movie, and this is probably my favorite high school movie. This one is probably in priority. To me, it captures most of the things we're talking about. And that is Footloose. I don't think anyone on the comments mentioned Footloose. Yeah, it's a great musical, but Footloose to me, you have everything. You have a new kid coming into town, and you have Ren trying to, he sees the girl, he wants to get to know and be accepted by the girl. He has the awkwardness of being accepted in school, and he meets Willie the first day, and he kind of gets picked on a little bit at first. People are rejecting him, and people are making fun of his clothes and his tie and everything he wears the first day. But Ren is completely true to himself, and that's one of my favorite things. And these are heroes to me in high school movies. Are characters who stay true to themselves, no less than Napoleon Dynamite. That Ren goes in, he's who he is. He's from the big city, and he's not trying to change or appease anyone. He's just trying to be himself and just kind of get by. And one of the things I appreciate the most about that movie with his performance with Kevin Bacon with the original, I love the remake as well, but with Kevin Bacon's performance before he went in to start filming that movie, he actually secretly enrolled in I think it was Payson High School in Utah, Norm, and in Payson. He actually enrolled secretly, and the only one that knew was the principal as a new kid. And he was actually treated the exact same way he was by the students, and they were rejecting him and kind of teasing him and kind of messing with him a little bit and making fun of his clothes and his hair and everything. Had no idea who he was. He wasn't a big actor at the time. He had done a few movies, but just that, first of all, he as a character actor, that he actually did that. He put himself out there to see what it was really like to be accepted, so he could put that into his performance. So when you watch Kevin Bacon walk around the high school and looking around awkwardly and kind of shyly at people, that's a real reaction, the way he felt when he went into a Utah school, which is kind of disappointing that that's how we treated, this new kid, just because he kind of looked and acted a little different.
Well, I'll tell you my research story, which was I was 23 years old. So I got them to check me into the local high school as a student that had just moved into town. I basically got them to create my character's life in the Provo High or whatever it was. I went and had that same experience for a day. The only people that knew that I wasn't that I was an actor was the principal and maybe the guidance counselor or something like that.
How extraordinary.
It was terrifying. I mean, and I got a real insight into literally how to play this part. And it was exactly like the movie. Kids gave me a hard time, made fun of me, made fun of my hair, made fun of my clothing. I was dressed and looked like the character. some of the girls giggled and formed little groups and would like whisper about me. And
This is amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I remember you did that.
But you take that aside, I felt that way a lot. But I love how true he was. He's a real hero, and he accomplishes everything. He overthrows well, he doesn't overthrow the law about not being able to dance, but he does fight his way around it. He overwhelms the girl. He kind of helps her. There's the whole knight in shining armor and kind of being a savior to a girl. That's always been kind of a cool thing I've always liked in stories. But he's there. He's her hero. Not trying to make a pun on the lyrics of those songs, but he's her hero and brings her out. He wins over her father, who was totally against him, and just kind of breaks free. And he kind of embraces and brings the whole high school together, most of them, in this one campaign to have a dance and just kind of be free and relax and just enjoy life and celebrate life. And I think between the shyness and him being who he is and having a crush on the girl, getting bullied, it has everything in it in a high school movie. And I just love it. And it's just an entertaining and a good story on top of great movie, great dancing, great performance with Kevin Bacon. So
that is one of my favorite movies. I love Footloose. And for some reason, I don't characterize it as a high school movie. I don't know why. I've not really thought about it as a high school movie. And I think the reason is because it deals with broader issues of the town. I know he's the main character, but there's the issue of the pastor and the death of his son, and the issues that his daughter is having with him, with John Lithgow's character, and then Kevin Bacon's character is having issues with his mom and being in this small town, coming from a large city, and coming to this town, and then there's the issue of the laws. So while it has a lot to do with high school, and I can see why someone would say it's a high school movie, I haven't considered it as a high school movie. If I did consider it as a high school movie, it would be high on my list. My list is a little more narrow than that, because I just didn't even think of it as a high school movie. But it's one of my favorites of all time that I could watch constantly and did watch.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah. I thought about it, and I watched both that one and the remake this last week while I was thinking about it. I was just thinking about it so much on the list. I was like, that is a great high school movie about a high school kid who deals with all these different things that I talked about on my list. You have a crush, you have some stereotypes in there. That's not the big aspect of the story, but all the things he's trying to do, all the things that he's trying to accomplish are completely based around his drive for the high school. It's about him, but it's everything that he's trying to accomplish for the school, and that's why he's really pushing for the dance, not so he can go dance, so that they can have a dance. And he does, and there's a whole storyline with him and his mom, where he's talking to his mom about why it's so important to him, and that's all awesome. But it's really about him being new in a small town, and having to deal with that. And I've been there. I understand that completely.
So I think this is kind of like The Karate Kid, where I can totally get why somebody would say this is a great high school movie, and I agree it's not a great movie, but for me, I just don't think of it as a high school movie. But I will also say that tractor scene with I Need a Hero playing is probably one of the most iconic scenes, and one of the scenes that I watched over and over and over as a kid, because I just love it. I think it's great, and it's so exciting to watch that at the time.
Yeah. And that's another one of embracing and just taking on a bully head on and not backing out. It's amazing. It's amazing story.
He didn't back out because his shoelace got caught, but still, regardless,
he was kind of little, but he showed up and he wasn't a coward. He went in, he got on the track. Yeah, he was trying to bail off. He was going to lose the chicken fight, but he still showed up. And even if he lost the chicken fight, just him being there still made a difference. Just like Karate Kid, whether you win or lose, it doesn't matter. The point that you showed up and you fought, that's what makes a difference. Same thing.
Right. Okay. No, I like that. I think that's a great number one. If I included it in a high school, like I said, if I considered it a high school movie, it would rate very high on my list. So
fair enough.
So number 3, Dead Poet Society. I think that this is a high school movie. It happens in a high school. Almost the entire movie is at a high school, albeit a private high school. John Keating, Robin Williams. It's one of his best, if not his best, serious role that he did, where it's not a comedy, zany type of thing. It's got a lot of great a lot of great actors in their younger years. Ethan Hawke, Robert Sean Leonard, and there's a lot of great stuff with poetry and kind of teaching people to open up their horizons and accept the romantic part of their lives, which I think was needed. I mean, the message of that was that these kids were kind of being bred to be just kind of robots to go out there and become doctors and lawyers and do all these things. And Mr. Keating taught them to love the arts and appreciate the arts and realize, I think one of the best lines is, yes, we need math, we need science, we need these things, and this helps us sustain life. But art and poetry and music, these are the things why we want to live life. It's what makes life worth living. And so, great message. One of my favorite movies. I could watch it over and over. Very sad, tragic ending, but great movie all around. So.
Yeah, I've already talked about how much I love and appreciate the movie. It's a really great drama, really great performances with everyone in it. It does deal with a lot of important relationships and situations with different characters in that story. A lot of real life things that they're experiencing and trying to cope with. But the thing I love about most is their bond together, and yeah, they have the appreciation for the teacher and everything. But it's really how they stand together and how they respond when the one kid dies, and then how and then they stand up when they're firing Ron Williams' character. It's they all stepped up and became, not on the table, but they all became a greater person, or people. They kind of matured, and they learned something from the suicide and everything that they wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, and they directed it towards the teacher that taught them to think outside the box, to seize the day and to seize the moment, and to make life meaningful, to do something, to take action. It's not all about all those more serious things, and it's an escapist philosophy, and that's what cinema's all about.
Yeah, it's a great movie, one of my favorites. I think it's a great film, and like I said earlier, Robin Williams at his best.
Absolutely.
Yeah. My number 2 is Dazed and Confused.
Oh my gosh.
This movie is one of my favorites, and the reason I put it on my list, I don't endorse necessarily watching R-rated movies, and this movie would certainly be R-rated because of language mainly. But it's a movie that you could watch edited and still get the gist of it. You could watch it on VidAngel, or you could watch it on TV, and still it's enjoyable. I love this movie for so many reasons, one of which, of course, being that there are so many big-name actors now that got their start from that movie, particularly Ben Affleck and Matthew McConaughey. You wouldn't even recognize Matthew McConaughey in the movie when you see it. There's also so many different stereotypical teenagers in the movie. You've got the jocks, you've got the freshmen who are coming in and trying to fit in. You've kind of got the nerdy guys in there. You've got the hot cheerleader girls. You have the girls who are just kind of the ones that are deep, a little more deeper and a little more analytical, kind of the nerdy girls as well. And it's a coming of age story. You have a deal where there you get multiple generations or multiple different variations of high school life. You have the freshmen who are coming in and trying to find their way there. You have the sophomores who are there who are just kind of had just kind of found their way and are kind of welcoming in the freshmen. And you got the seniors who, they're in their last year. They're trying to make it count. And also trying to figure out kind of what they're going to do with their life. And you've got the jocks in a small town who are trying to, finish out and realizing how important high school football is to them. And then you even got Matthew McConaughey's character, who is a guy who never left high school and is kind of the older guy who still is coming about and hanging out with them, even though he's way too old to be doing it. So you have all these different things. There's a lot of stuff that you can, at least in my high school life, I could see myself doing, like cruising the town and ending up in the woods somewhere on a party and doing things like that. I mean, that are just spontaneous and fun and just a lot of crazy stuff going on. Oh, and you also got the Dreggy character, which is iconic for the 70s and also the 90s, really, if you want to be honest. So Great movie, just one of my favorites. What do you think of that one?
I saw it like when it first came out, and I don't even remember it. Stoner movies are not my favorite.
You know, the thing is, okay, so I don't think it's a stoner movie. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of drug use in it. There's a lot of marijuana use in the movie because it's in the 70s. So, of course, you know, that's what they did. And there's a big beer bash at the end. So there's a lot of adult themes. It's not one you want to watch with your kids, okay? But it is one that captures, in my mind, a high school experience and the different levels of what a high schooler goes through from freshman to senior and even beyond, you know? So I love
That's fine. I'm not going to argue that at all.
Yeah, and I also like Randall Floyd. I love his character because he kind of, in my mind, he is the typical guy who gets it. He's the jock. He's the quarterback. He loves, you know, he's got everything he would ever want, but he understands, you know, different than a lot of other people. And I think that also this movie helped me kind of realize something very important. You know, there's a scene at the very end where he's hanging out on the football field with a bunch of people, and they're telling him, they're like, you know, Randy, you have everything you want. You run this school. You can do whatever you want. Why are you complaining about the way that this is? And he says, well, sure, yeah, it's great, but if I later on in life, if you catch me ever saying that these are the best years of my life, remind me to kill myself. You know what I mean? Like that kind of was a moment for me, almost an awakening for me when I watched the movie, when I realized all this stuff that is important about high school, all this stuff that feels like it's so important. You know, when you're in that bubble and you see high school and you see things that happen, you feel like it's your whole world, it's your whole life. You realize how insignificant it really is. And when you get past it, you know, you realize that as important as that stuff was, it really is kind of trivial. You know, he kind of gets it. The high school football game, as important it is to his friends, is really, in the grand scheme of things, not that big a deal. And so, like I said, I love it. It's a great movie. So that's my number 2. Now, my number 1, Clueless.
Seriously?
Seriously. This
is like a chick's list right here. This is ridiculous.
Clueless is a classic movie. I love it. I mean, one of Alicia Silverstone's only roles, but her best. You get Brittany Murphy. You get an early Paul Rudd, who was fantastic. This is another movie that kind of reminded me a little bit of my high school experience. I knew a lot of girls who dressed like that and acted like that. A lot of guys who, you know, were the skater guys. You get a lot of different stereotypical people involved. And so, you know, the whole dynamic between the stepbrother and the stepsister kind of falling for each other was a little weird. But other than that, I thought it was a really funny movie. It made me laugh a lot. It still makes me laugh. I could watch it today and it's still funny. Just overall, a great movie. So.
That's fine. It's your list. It's no Grease 2.
It's so much better than Grease 2. And also, it's a classic high school movie. You know, this is a classic high school movie. That's the only way to describe it. So
that's fine. All right. Well, that's our lists. Wasn't that exciting, everybody? If you thought that was exciting, then comment below and explain why Josh is a complete loser for having never seen Breakfast Club, or why I'm a complete loser with no taste for liking Grease 2.
That's true. And also explain to Tim why Clueless does belong on the top of a list and why he's wrong on Dazed and Confused, because it's a really great movie.
Yeah, argue that one. Stoner movies are one thing. We have complete movies that are so fixated on marijuana. That's just one of my pet peeves. That's one of my biggest issues. But anyway, okay. Well, there's our top 7. What do we talk about? High school movies. And yeah. So thanks for watching, and go ahead and subscribe, share if you liked it, and we'll see you next time on Saints on Cinema. Have fun, guys.